Well, wonderful. I'm so glad you all are here. We are having a great Master Gardener webinar series this year. We are on July 28th with Dr. Knox, who's going to be speaking about the gardens of the Big Bend. And remember, we'll ignore that. We are going to use the question and answer exclusively today, okay? And if you are interested, the Master Gardener Volunteer Conference is going to be starting or will be held October 16th through 19th in Kissimmee. We've got Gary Bachman coming down from Mississippi to talk about Southern gardening all year long. And then we've got the Garden Fit PBS series stars, Madeline Hooper and Mr. Holmes, to be speaking to us also. Registration for the conference should be opening very soon. I know it's delayed, but we will get it open as soon as possible. Our presenter today is Dr. Gary Knox. He's a professor in environmental horticulture. He has had a 38-year career in horticulture, and we're just so thrilled that Gary is with us. He has given so much to the Florida Master Gardener Volunteer Program over the years, as well as the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program. He's just been a wonderful supporter of both. And his applied research and extension programming focuses on plant evaluation and plant health. He helps plants to minimize impacts from pests and diseases, promotes pollinator health, helps to reduce invasiveness of non-native plants, wants to conserve native species, and improve plant diversity for the green industry for Florida gardeners. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, Gary, and welcome you to the Master Gardener webinar. We are so thrilled that you're here.
Hey, Wendy, thank you very much. It was a great introduction. I'm thrilled to be here. I mean, Master Gardeners are like the best audience ever as far as I'm concerned. So I'm really happy to be here today. I'm going to say that I am going to be focusing on some of the new plants or some of the plants that have performed the best for us here at Gardens of the Big Bend. And even though we are in North Florida, I also want to reassure everybody that a lot of the annuals and perennials that I'll be talking about are applicable all the way to the very south of Florida. And a lot of the shrubs and trees will be as well, at least in Central Florida, if not beyond. And in many cases, you'll see we have some zone envy in terms of plants that do better in Central and South Florida that we're trying to grow up here also. To give you a little preview of the presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about Gardens of the Big Bend. I'm going to talk about gardens and botanic gardens in general. And then I'm going to get to the fun stuff where we talk about some of the plants in particular. So that's sort of an overview. And Wendy, I'm going to try to share my screen now. And hopefully everything is taking place the way it should. And I'll trust you to let me know if things go astray or awry here.
Okay, it's looking good, Gary. Go for it.
All right, thanks. So standouts and shout outs from Gardens of the Big Bend. And first of all, you have to know where we are. So we are in the Big Bend of Florida, which is the region where the Panhandle and the Peninsula kind of join together. And specifically, we're located in Quincy, Florida, which is just west of Tallahassee in Gadsden County. And the Gardens of the Big Bend is a botanical garden that we started here on the grounds of the University of Florida's North Florida Research and Education Center. And we're one of the off-campus facilities. We have about 15 faculty here and 60 staff that cover pretty much all areas of agriculture and natural resources in terms of research and extension. And we were thrilled to be able to start the Gardens of the Big Bend officially in 2009, although I had been surreptitiously planting on the grounds here and there for probably a decade or two before that. But that gives you a little sense of our background and where we are. And as you probably know already, the RECs, the Research and Education Centers, there's a network of them across the state to support Florida's agriculture and natural resources. And we just happen to be one of the largest ones on 1,000 acres up here in North Florida. Gardens of the Big Bend is located on the grounds, and it's this the sign that greets you as you drive onto our grounds, and we hope some of you do come to visit us in the near future. And again, this is sort of the photo of the welcome sign and the a little bit more of the details about the gardens of the Big Bend. We call it Gardens Plural of the Big Bend because we actually have 11 themed gardens here, each covering a different topic or plant group or style of gardening, if you will. Going from left to right on the screen, we have a palm garden, and you know, we have palm envy. We can't grow all the fabulous palms that you can in South Florida or even Central Florida, but we are trying to highlight the tried and true palms, as well as some of the new or unusual palms that are hardy for us in North Florida. The second garden is our Robert and Erlain Woodward Heritage Garden. It's our newest garden, and it is endowed. And it is a garden that we're just developing, and it's going to highlight plants that are important to Native Americans and pioneers, as well as residents of the area up until the 1930s or so. Next, we have a Jurassic Garden featuring conifers and cycads, you know, plants representing the age of the dinosaurs, trying to interest youth a little bit in some aspects here. We have a native showcase garden. We have a pavilion shade garden focusing on plants adapted to shade. We have a champion arboretum. We have a discovery garden focusing on new, improved, and underutilized trees, shrubs, and perennials. We have a Mediterranean garden with plants that have lower water needs than others. And finally, we have a dry garden or dune garden or desert garden, if you will, focusing on those kinds of plants. And then not shown on the map is our Magnolia Garden, which is part of the U.S. National Collection of Magnolias, as well as a very large Crape Myrtle collection. So that's a bit of an overview of the gardens themselves. To tell you a little bit about our goals of Gardens of the Big Bend, we strive to be a living laboratory where we're planting new and different plants out there to evaluate how they perform in our climate and soils, so that we can relate this to you, the gardeners, as well as growers and nursery folks out there. We strive to be a living classroom, welcoming groups from 1 to 100 to come and where we can actively give tours of the various gardens, or passively you can come and view the gardens. We have signage, we have plants on most of the plants, signs on most of the plants that tell the name and the common name and other information. And gardens are open dawn to dusk, 365 days a year. But of course, if you want me or Kelly to speak, you'll have to come on a work day. Sorry about that. Another of our important functions is to serve as a germplasm repository, where we can conserve rare and endangered species, like the ash magnolia in the middle photograph there, or the Magnolia spherantha on the right-hand side, which are seeds that I collected in China back in 2013, and thus introduced this species for the first time outside China to Quincy, Florida, and then beyond as we propagated and spread the plant to other gardens. So those are the real functions of us, and again, to emphasize the rare and exotic nature of some of the plants that we're cultivating here. The Magnolia Garden is part of the National Collection of Magnolias. We have 40 species, 158 individual specimens, including a lot of cultivars of everything from our native Sweet Bay Magnolia and Southern Magnolia to the Japanese and saucer magnolias that are very popular, to some of the brand new evergreen species from Asia and China that we're able to highlight here. So it is one of the emphases of our gardens here. So, and really most of all, what we try to do is inspire people about plants and gardens. And I think that's probably one of our most important functions, is to try to bring people in and inspire them to learn more about plants and gardens and to get out there and do more with plants and gardens. And so this leads me into discussion, a general discussion about the importance of gardens. And I really hope that everybody out there supports your local and regional gardens, whether they're the garden, the master gardener organized garden at your local county extension office, or a county park, or a botanical garden that might be present in your town or in your region. I think it's really important that we support our gardens. For one, these gardens represent a place to learn about plants and gardens and gardening and nature. And I think that's something we need to strive to encourage everybody to visit so that they can have a greater appreciation for plants and gardening. I think it's a place where people can come and experience nature and plants and gardens, whether it's sticking your nose in a flower or viewing plants that are unfamiliar to you. I often like to say that I think botanical gardens are like a zoo for plants, in that it's a place where you can go and view plants from other countries, from the other side of the world, that you otherwise might not be able to see that plant without traveling for hours and hours and hours. So it's really a way to experience plants from all other aspects of other parts of the world and other types of climates and ecosystems as well. I think a third important function of gardens is a place to conserve rare and endangered species. Now, the best place to preserve species is going to be in their natural habitat, but we all know from the news every day that our forests are shrinking in size or being degraded by human activities, or climate change is causing fires or floods or other disasters to take place. And so that really emphasizes how important it is that we get examples of these rare and endangered plants and bring them into a botanical garden to help conserve them, to display them to people so they learn more about rare plants and endangered plants, as well as preserve them in the event that eventually we have to reintroduce them to their natural areas. And the wonderful thing about gardens is that we shouldn't strive to have a plant represented in just one garden. We should strive to have that plant represented in multiple gardens, so we have lots of backups for these rare and endangered plants. And so that's the real beauty, I think, from a conservation standpoint, the ever increasing importance of our gardens to do that for us. And then finally, last, again, I think gardens are really important as a place to inspire people, to inspire youth to get more interested in plants and nature, to inspire us to keep active in our older years or retirement years, or in my case, retirement years, to learn more about plants and celebrate them all the more. So I do hope you go and get out there and support your local and regional gardens. And I can't escape talking about Gardens of the Big Bend if I didn't give a big shout out to the supporters of Gardens of the Big Bend. And that is a group called Gardening Friends of the Big Bend that formed back in 2007. It's a nonprofit group that does literally everything you could possibly want them to do for me. They're out there working so hard, whether it's working in the garden, whether it's holding programs and inviting speakers in. And of course, from a garden standpoint, best of all, they do fundraising, typically through plant sales of plants that they grow themselves. And our garden group is renowned for growing rare and unusual plants, as well as plants that do really well in our area, but are hard to find in the nurseries because the nurseries don't like to grow them. But because we have volunteer labor and time, we can commit to growing some of these rare and unusual and hard to grow plants and offer them out to folks. And so our next big plant sale is going to be Saturday, October 1st. So anyone who's in the area, please come by, and I can guarantee you that we'll have some plants that will amaze you, I think, or at least I hope they will amaze and surprise you. All right, so now from moving into Gardens of the Big Bend and telling you a little bit about some of the standouts and shout outs of plants that have been performing particularly well for us that I think deserve another look or a second look or a new look in some cases. I do want to say that I categorize these plants as those that are going to be generally available or often available at big box stores or nurseries or garden groups, things like that. The second group I'm going to talk about are a little bit harder to find, but I think they're going to be worth the hunt to try to find these plants. And then the third category, I will confess, are going to be things that are, wow, really cool, but probably hard to find. And it's just something that we can kind of lust over until we make the right connections to get them a little bit more broadly available. So those are kind of the categories there. And then in each category, I'm going to talk about plants from the ground up. I'm going to start with talking about the annuals and perennials, and then grow to some of the larger perennials, and then shrubs, and then trees. So that kind of gives you an idea of the progression that I'm going to make in each of these categories. Now, even though these plants are really delightful and really cool, we still have to remember our good old Florida-friendly landscaping principles, and the number one principle being right plant, right place. So even though I think these plants are really nice and special and cool, we do have to remember that we just can't plant them willy-nilly. We do need to be thoughtful about how we're going to acquire them and where we're going to use them. So I mean, I get excited about new plants too, and sometimes we have to take a reality check to make sure that we can accommodate those plants' needs in our particular gardens. So first off, I'm going to move into discussions of plants that are often available or generally available in nurseries, garden centers, big box stores, garden groups, people like that, places like that. And the first one that I'm going to talk about is perennial peanut, or more specifically, Rhizoma perennial peanut. And this is a species that I think is really taking Florida by storm lately, because we're starting to look for alternatives to turf grass for lawns or ground covers, alternatives to certain ground covers. We're looking for things that are a little bit more environmentally friendly, that don't need as much water, that don't need as much fertilizer, that are pest resistant, that still provide a lot of ornamental value. And this is where I think Rhizoma perennial peanut really fits the bill. I think we're on the cusp of Rhizoma perennial peanut for where it's really going to become popular and more widely available. You can see on the slide some of the characteristics that it has. It's one of those plants that actually is better as you move further south, as opposed to North Florida, because North Florida, our winter weather tends to make it die back, whereas it's more evergreen in Central and South Florida. There is a certain buyer beware that you must be cognizant of, and that is the plants are not well labeled in some of our big box stores these days, and sometimes they're selling the pinto peanut instead of the Rhizoma peanut. And so you have to be aware that really we recommend Rhizoma peanut as probably the better of the two types to try to plant and grow. Then within the world of Rhizoma perennial peanut, it's really exciting because there are some superior forms that are better for us to use in the landscape. This plant is very popular as a forage as a high quality forage for horses and other animals, but it's the lower growing types that are really better for landscape purposes. And if you can, you should try to search out the ones like EcoTurf, which is a release from the University of Florida, or look for some of the ones like waxy leaf or pointed, which are other types that are more ornamental that are widely available. And then the other good news is that the University of Florida is about to release a number of new landscape ornamental cultivars of perennial peanut over the next couple of years. So that's something that we have to look forward to as well. So Rhizoma peanut is a great plant, I think, for Florida. The next plant or group of plants that I'm going to talk about are those that are in the genus Cuphea, C-U-P-H-E-A. And while this group themselves are not native to Florida, there are members of this genus that are native to Florida, but aren't very ornamental. And the ones that are ornamental tend to be native to Mexico and Central America. So they're what I call near natives in the sense that they still have the same pollinators that some of our native Kufias will use and benefit from. So they're really wonderful from that standpoint. This particular plant is really fun because the flowers have two ears that stick up on them, and it's sometimes called the bat face flower. It's sometimes called the Mickey Mouse flower, although I don't know that Disney appreciates us calling it that. But hey, that's what it looks like, right? It's a wonderful plant. It makes a great annual perennial ground cover even, because it does persist and spread in certain areas. There are improved cultivars out there, and on the right I've got one called Georgia Scarlet that I'm showing, but there are a number of other ones out there that are worth seeking out. And as I said, there are a number of other species in this group, and others of them are typically called the firecracker plant or cigar flower. And these are ones that bees and butterflies go crazy for, and hummingbirds. And it's really fun to see these giant bumblebees crawl into these tubes of flowers to go after the nectar in there. But they're widely used by pollinators. They have beautiful orange, yellow, sometimes red flowers. Usually orange tipped in yellow or orange tipped in red, something like that. This is a species Kufia ignea. You can also find another one, again, under the general name firecracker plant, Kufia micropetala. Really great flower shows in the fall, late summer and fall. Kufia schumannii, much larger flowers than some of the other ones we looked at before. Really great plant. These all tend to be anywhere from 2 by 2 foot to 4 by 4 foot, depending on your conditions and the species. And they all tend to be a full sun type of a plant. We are starting to get improved cultivars as a result of breeding. David Verity is one that's out there, and for us, it gets about 3 by 3 in size and has a really great, nice compact habit. Lots of flowers. And then even the big fancy flower companies, flower seed companies are introducing cultivars these days. This is one called Vermilionaire that was introduced by Proven Winners a few years ago. And again, it's got a little bit smaller, a little bit more compact, much heavier flowering than some of the species types that I talked about before. But I think this is a great group to engage pollinators with. It's got a little different, the orange flowers are a little different flower color that different from the pink and the white that we see oftentimes. And it's just overall, it's a great group of plants to include in the garden. Now, in contrast to the fine texture and bright colors of the Kufias or firecracker plants, this next plant is really grown more for its very bold textured foliage. It's really one of my favorite plants. It is the giant leopard plant, Farfugium japonicum giganteum. It's called giant leopard plant, sometimes called tractor seat plant by those who come from a little bit more rural background and knowing what it resembles. It's a wonderful plant. It grows from a crown, produces these large leaves that are anywhere from, 8 to 12 to 16 inches in diameter. Dark green. This is a shade plant for sure. Very widely adapted. It does spread slowly from crowns, but it's really one that needs to be actively divided to spread that way. It's a wonderful plant, and I kind of went overboard in my own home landscape, which is what you're seeing here in terms of using it. Great texture and color, this deep green for the landscape. And then it's got this bonus that in the fall, it throws up these stalks of bright yellow daisy-like flowers. And this is in a full shade plant. So talk about, brightening your shade. It can really show off nicely there. So it's a plant that really offers everything. And it's completely cold hardy in North Florida and never dies down for us at all. So wonderful, wonderful plant. There are some smaller improved cultivars that have some have variegation, some have frills on the leaves like you see here. But we find they really aren't quite as vigorous or aren't quite as showy as the giant leafed form of this plant. So, but definitely one worth looking for. In keeping with the shade theme, the blue rabbit's foot fern is another one of our favorites up here. Again, a shade plant, a true fern. It has stems that crawl along the ground right at underneath the mulch and puts up these beautiful bright blue fronds that are leathery, almost rubbery in appearance. And from a distance, you almost wonder if that isn't somebody's idea of a joke, sticking a plastic plant in the ground. But sure enough, it is a real live fern, and it does offer great texture and a very different foliage color that we can appreciate in a shady spot in the garden. So blue rabbit's foot fern is a favorite. Moving away from shade and back to sun, and again, a pollinator loving plant. Basils, of course, are all edible that we enjoy. This particular basil is African blue basil, and it has proven to be very durable in the landscape, unlike some of the sweet basils that are wonderful to grow, but they oftentimes collapse on us with time. But African blue basil is a hybrid of two basil species, and it is said to be sterile. And because of that, it does not set seed, but it does continually produce flowers all summer long. And the flowers are really heavily foraged by bees of all types. You just can't walk by this plant without noticing all the activity of bees on the flowers. The basil is edible. It's maybe not as pleasant a flavor as sweet basil, but I certainly use it in pestos and in cooking and salads and so on all the time. It tends to be more of an annual in North Florida, and even if it does overwinter for you in North or Central Florida or other places, it does tend to get woody with time. So really, it does need to be replaced regularly. It's not one that can last perpetually, but it is a wonderful plant nonetheless. Another plant that is kind of new, or it's been around for about 10 years now, I guess, but you may not be familiar with it. When we talk about Mahonias, many of you may think of the very prickly-leaved Mahonias that tend to look more like a holly than anything else. And this is definitely not that. This is a welcome improvement away from all those prickly-leaved Mahonias. This is Mahonia Yuria bracteata, and this particular one is a selection called Soft Caress, and just like its name implies, the foliage is wonderfully soft. It tends to be a little leathery, perhaps, but it doesn't have the prickles like the old-fashioned Mahonias have. It is a wonderful plant in shade or, to our delight, in part sun as well, as we found here in North Florida. It grows anywhere from 3 foot tall and wide to 5 foot tall and wide, depending on the length of time and the conditions that you have for it. Like other Mahonias, it does produce spikes of beautiful yellow flowers in the fall. And these flowers, again, are heavily fed upon by bees. So it's a welcome plant to pollinators in your landscape. And you can't keep anything secret for too long. And so other companies have found the joys of this species of Mahonia, and we're seeing other new introductions out there. There's one called Indigo Flare, and there's others as well that are being introduced. And oftentimes these are being introduced by the branded companies, and that's why you can often find these even in a big box store of all places. Getting up to a little bit bigger statured plants, more larger shrubs, I'm going to talk briefly about some camellias. And I'm not talking about the old-fashioned Camellia japonica, which is so often used in flower shows and so on. I'm really talking about the Sasanqua type camellias, the landscape garden camellias that put on such a wonderful show for us, typically in fall and winter. There is a new series of these camellias that have been introduced a few years ago by breeder Bobby Green from Fairhope, Alabama. and they're really super well adapted to the Gulf Coast and Florida in general. They're all shrubby. They're not the giant shrubs like some sasanquas can be. They tend to be more restrained, more compact, and very, very floriferous. They're in the series that are called the October Magic series. This one is October Magic Carpet that I particularly like because it is wider than it is tall. It is in about the 7 or 8 years that we've had it here, it's still only about 3 or 4 feet tall and about 5 feet wide. So it's wonderful to have something that's a little bit smaller stature that can be even a foundation plant for us and not be such a huge dominant plant in the landscape. Really great flower color. Just another one in the series is, again, a personal preference, October Magic Orchid. I really love the two-tone flowers on this. It is more of an upright shrub, but it's wonderful. There are a dozen or more plants in this series that he released, and we're still in the process of evaluating them all to see if there's any that are particularly good or maybe not so good for us in our area. And hopefully in future years, we can get back to you on our favorites in the series. But it's definitely one to seek out and try. Moving to a native plant, and one that we maybe have a little bit of zone envy here, and that is our native firebush, Amelia patens. It's a wonderful plant, again, with those orange tubular flowers, really attracting pollinators and hummingbirds and so on. Wonderful native plant that in North Florida tends to get knocked back every once in a while from cold weather or frost or freeze, but that y'all in Central and South Florida can grow with abandon. You can't keep a good plant down, and breeders have discovered this plant and are starting to hybridize it or to develop better selections of this. And I think that's something we can look forward to on the market. In particular, I know there's one called Lime Sizzler, which actually has sort of a limey colored foliage that you can get for something new and different in the landscape. But I think this is one of our natives that we can see some selections being made and introduced in future years. Another plant group that is a favorite of mine that is also derived from Florida natives are the hardy hibiscus. And this is something that really more for North Florida and Central Florida. They are derived from native species of hibiscus to Florida. They're a plant that typically will die after a frost or will decline during winter and cooler weather. And it's a plant that management-wise, we would cut back in winter and watch for the new shoots to emerge in late spring. And then they will grow to form a nice shrub of anywhere from 3 foot by 3 foot in size to 6 foot by 6 foot, and freely producing these dinner plate sized flowers all summer and fall, all the way to frost or winter time. Really a great group of plants. As I said, they're derived from native Florida hibiscus species. And these are the natives here, which are, if you're into native plants, are well worth growing on their own. But keep in mind the Hibiscus grandiflorus, as in the photo on the left, that plant can grow 15 feet tall. So it's a little bit larger than what we might realize, as well as the Mishudas one in the middle can get quite large. And they tend not to have as many flowers as the cultivated forms, but they're wonderful natives. And they've been used to great effect to produce a whole bunch of different cultivars now available, different flower colors, different flower forms. You can see the swirl that you can get in Southern Belle on the left. And then the latest introduction is burgundy and purple leaf foliage that you can get on these also. So again, adding another color dimension. All of these derived from Florida natives. Really wonderful. Keeping with hibiscus, an old-timey plant is the Althea or Rose of Sharon. And it's a plant that breeders have rediscovered in recent years. And we're seeing introductions of a lot of really improved varieties of Rose of Sharon. Some of them in more northern climates are actually invasive. They are not in our Florida conditions, but nonetheless, breeders are introducing sterile forms to help reduce this even more, which again leads to more floriferous forms. So There's new series out there. You can see Sugar Tit on the left has variegated foliage as well as pink flowers. There's a smoothie series where I'm showing raspberry smoothie on your right. There's breeders. There's a breeder, Ryan Contreras, at Oregon State, who's breeding these fabulous small tree size Rose of Sharon with, again, flowers as big as dinner plates that I can't wait for him to introduce. But there's a lot of attention being given to this group. We have some great ones now, and we can look forward to even better ones in the future. Getting out of breath here. All right, another of my favorite groups of plants are the hydrangeas. And although this group is not native, this group is old-timey and very highly appreciated. And it's a group that really had a tremendous resurrection starting about 20 years ago with the introduction of this cultivar here called Endless Summer. And the dramatic difference with this cultivar is that it is an ever-blooming type of big leaf hydrangea. And back in the late 90s and early 2000s, we did some research here where we found that we could get over 25 weeks of flowering on some of these newly discovered reblooming types as compared to 5 or 6 or so from the old-fashioned big leaf hydrangea. So it really was a revolution in the world of hydrangeas. And consequently, almost all the new types that have been introduced almost all of them have this reblooming characteristic. There's been tremendous interest in hydrangeas and hydrangea breeding, and we really can't keep up with all the new types and series being introduced these days. I've got 2 of them shown on the screen here. Let's Dance is a series. This is Let's Dance Blue Jangles. There's Let's Dance Tango. There's Let's Dance this and that in the series. On the right is Tough Stuff. There's a Tough Stuff series. This is the original Tough Stuff, and one of my favorites because it's so compact. After 8 years in the ground, it's still only 3 feet tall and 5 feet wide. It's a wonderful plant that you don't have to hack back as you used to with some of our old-timey types of hydrangeas. A lot of promise out there in hydrangeas, big leaf hydrangeas. A couple of the other ones just to highlight our favorites, Aisha on the left, very unique with Aisha having the florets that are spoon-shaped, really give it a different texture to the plant. And then Fuji Waterfall on the right, which is a lace cap type, but you see that it's got sterile florets that are double and triple and quadruple, and they all tend to kind of hang or dangle or waterfall off the edge of the flower, really giving a unique effect. Lots of excitement in the world of big leaf hydrangeas. Now we do have, as you know, a wonderful native hydrangea as well. Oakleaf hydrangea is native to the area, and this is a shot of it in the wild in Torrey State Park up here in North Florida. And in the wild, Oakleaf hydrangeas are kind of wild. They're huge. They're 6, 8, 10 feet tall. They're rangy. They're lanky. They go all over the place. And so when you see them in the wild, it's a little hard to adapt directly into our gardens, but that's why people have been making selections, selecting them for flowers, selecting them for a little bit more compact habits and a little bit more reliable foliage and so forth. These are 2 of a new series out called the Gatsby series. Again, breeders have been paying attention to our native Oakleaf hydrangeas. These are wonderful types. Even more advantageous are these types that have been selected for their smaller size. This is one called Peewee that truly is about 5 feet tall and wide in our garden here in North Florida. So it's really a wonderful selection. And as with some of the other hydrangeas, there are sterile forms. This is Snowflake, which has double florets because it is sterile and really lends a very frilly appearance to the flowers because of that. So lots of excitement with our native Oakleaf hydrangeas. Another native plant found is our Florida anise, Alyssium floridanum, again shown in Torrey State Park up here. Maybe not as widely known, but it's a great shade plant having these very unusual, bright red, wheel-shaped flowers. And breeders have taken notice of these and have started working with them to introduce a little bit smaller statured, more compact, more floriferous forms, shown here. Now, in this case, they hybridized them with a Mexican species of Alyssium, with our native species, but they are getting something a little bit more compact and a little bit more floriferous. And you can see Woodlander's Ruby has lovely double pink flowers. And then the one on the right is Orion, very compact, great dark foliage, and it has repeat flushes of flowers all summer long on Orion. So another exciting group of plants. You may know that there is another native Alyssium to Florida, the Ocala Anise. And in the world of Ocala Anise, there's really only one outstanding selection I can point to right now, and that is this yellow foliage selection called Florida Sunshine. And again, wow, talk about a foliage color for a large shrub in your landscape. It really is very, very effective in that sense. So going away from the native to the absurdly exotic, maybe. Anyone who's heard me speak before knows I can't speak without talking about Crape Myrtles, another one of my plant passions. And in this case, I want you to realize that there's a whole new series of purple leaf Crape Myrtles out there. Just like purple leaf loropetalums or purple leaf barberries, there's a whole new series of purple leaf Crape Myrtles. And shown here are representatives of the Magic series, of the Ebony series, and of the Delta series. Slight differences, but they have this wonderful purple foliage color. These are two representatives of the Delta series of Crape Myrtles, Delta Jazz and Delta Breeze. And basically they have Crape Myrtles with these nice rich purple leaf color in all the different flower colors, white, pink, lavender, and purple. And of course, every series tries to outdo the others. The Black Diamond is another series that you'll find quite readily, and with particularly dark purple foliage, and it can be very effective use in the landscape. They all tend to be semi-dwarf to medium-sized trees, probably topping out at 8 to 15 feet in height. We're still evaluating that. They haven't been out quite long enough to know for sure, but they really make a great patio tree or large shrub in a sunny spot in the landscape. Another plant that's people have been taking a second look at is our chase tree or vitex. It's a summer flowering, just like the Crape Myrtle, but in this case, the flowers are purple or bluish to pink to white. And there are a whole new series of vitex cultivars being released. They're really fairly new. We don't have a whole lot of knowledge about these yet. But it's something to be aware of and keep an eye out for. One of the new ones is a dwarf one, blue puffball on the left, and another one is a sterile hybrid called Flipside on the right, in which the undersides of the leaves are bright purple colored. Top side is green, bottom side is bright purple. It still has your lavender purple flowers, but in this case, the flowers are sterile and will not set viable seeds. Another nice characteristic. So moving on to a few plants that are a little bit harder to find, but worth the hunt. You can probably find them at specialty nurseries, better garden centers, internet mail order nurseries, and so on. But I think they're fun plants to have. Another one of my passions are summer bulbs, and in particular, rain lilies. And rain lilies are true bulbs that, as their name implies, will burst into flower after a summer rain. And they come in white, pink, or yellow flower colors, and newer ones are pastels as well. Many of them are descended from a native Florida plant, the Adamasco lily, Zephyranthus adamasco, and that's a shot of it in the woods. And they have been hybridized with other species from Central and South America to produce a whole range of really fabulous flowers. I really just can't say enough of them. They're like a free lunch plant. They all of a sudden you have a rain and they burst into bloom, give you this lovely bits of color in the landscape. Another group that, again, is adapted all the way to South Florida are the Rhizomatous Begonias. And this is where I have some zonal envy here, in that North Florida, we tend to get some cold damage on these, but they're fabulous performers in Central and South Florida. As the name implies, they have true rhizomes that there is a very thick, fleshy rhizome that crawls just along the surface of the ground or underneath the mulch, from which roots emerge below and leaves emerge above, typically long petal flower stalks, or leaf stalks, and a very broad range of leaf forms and leaf colors can be found on the Rhizomatous Begonias. And they form individually nice little clumps that have very nice texture and color in a shady situation. And actually, go on to the next slide here, you can actually use them and grow them in beds or patches, and they have the bonus of producing these wonderful stalks of flowers in springtime, white to pink, as you can see here. And the shot on the right is actually my home garden, and you can see that I go crazy for some things. I just couldn't resist these, even though they are a little more tender for us here in North Florida. Great plants. Another good shade plant that is not very widely known is the bridal veil. It is Clarodendrum Levifolium, previously known as Clarodendrum Wallacei. Unlike other Clarodendrums, it does not wander through the garden and create a pest. It actually moves very slowly, a few inches at a time, through the garden, produces wonderful glossy green stalks that emerge and grow upwards of 4 to 6 feet in height. And in the fall of the year, the tips of each branch produces this wonderful dangly flower stalk of beautiful pure white flowers. Really very lovely effect in the shade. Again, really to have these wonderful flowers in a shady situation is quite nice. Another good plant for shade or sun are Chinese rain bells, Strobilanthus hamiltoniana. Again, some of the taxonomists can't quite make up their mind of the species here, but the rain bells is a delightful plant in sun or shade, putting up these beautiful arching stalks of dark green leaves that in late summer will produce these airy panicles of pink to purplish bells that dangle from the branches, and again are appreciated by pollinators too. It can grow quite large. I've seen them, whoops, sorry, wrong plant. I've seen them grow upwards of 6 feet tall and wide in Central Florida and points south, and typically not as far north, as much growing up here up north. All right, a favorite plant here is the one I gave you a preview of, and that is one with a fun name called Bolo Bolo. It is Clappertonia Ficofolia. And again, it's one that actually does better in Central Florida than it does for us in North Florida, because it can get zapped by our cold or needs to be pruned back up here in North Florida. It is a plant that for us emerges in late spring and grows anywhere from 4 to 6 feet tall and 6 to 8 feet wide in one growing season. And starting in summer produces these wonderful flowers in this purpley pink or white, huge 3 to 4 inch flowers. And the really neat thing about them, let's see if I can get this to work. Yeah, that even in the slightest breeze, the stamens will shake and shiver, and the flower petals will shudder a little bit and flutter. And it really gives quite a lovely effect in the garden, even above and beyond the flower size and shape themselves. Have a really interesting fruit that I forgot to stick in a photo of, but it's a winner all the way around. All right. Back to something a little bit more mundane, maybe, the world of gardenias, but something that's very different. And that is the cultivar variegata. And this is a plant that I love to take people out and fool them on, because from a distance, you can't tell what this plant is, other than it gives a tremendous variegated foliaged plant for a shady situation and really brightens up the shade. And it is a true gardenia, Gardenia jasminoides. And you say, well, that's fabulous for foliage color, but does it still flower? Well, if you look closely in the middle here, you'll see there is a flower right there. It is a single flower, and that it is white. And although you can't see it really against the variegated foliage, it does have the fragrance that we so appreciate from gardenias. But it's really a wonderful plant just to grow for the foliage alone, let alone the flowers. So, well, let's see. I want to talk about a few more plants here before we wrap it up. Another plant that's worth the hunt are some of the newer types of tea olive. Tea olive really is a beloved old-timey plant, but there are some exciting forms out there, specifically one called Fudingju or Nanjing Beauty, which has tremendous clusters of flowers in the axils of the leaves, as you see on the left. And then the other new development are a series of ones with colorful flowers, in this case, Apricot Echo with orange flowers. There's also a form with yellow flowers out there. So it's a nice new addition to an old-timey plant. One of the rare and endangered plants that we can help by planting them in our gardens is a Florida native endangered ash magnolia, found only in 9 counties in Florida, but is adaptable to a much broader area. And these days we are propagating from plants that are garden grown, so we can, with good conscience, acquire and plant ash magnolias, which make fabulous small trees and a shady spot in the landscape, particularly if you happen to have an organic soil or a good soil. They make these huge, 12-inch diameter flowers that are displayed against 18 to 24-inch long leaves. Really very dramatic appearance in the landscape, very, very dramatic. And sticking with the theme of magnolias, but lesser known magnolias, there are really wonderful yellow flowered deciduous magnolias available to us these days. And they're ones that are a little harder to find, but it's an unusual flower color for a tree that we can get to and appreciate in our landscape all the more. So at this point, Wendy, I think I'm going to cut to the end, if you will, of my slides, since I know I'm going long here. You know me.
No, Gary, we have so many questions for you. So I hope you have a little bit of time.
I will.
Okay.
I will. Let me just zip through a few of these just so that I can maybe tempt and tease you with some of the things to look at.
This is a good reason to come up to the gardens.
Right. Look at this. This is a Nuttall oak. It's not a native oak, but it's native to Texas and Arkansas, that has bright red new growth when it emerges in spring. And then every flush of growth is bright red as well before it turns green. Really exciting.
Wow.
Conifers, wonderful stuff. Inspiration, right? Or at least I hope that's what I'm trying to convey here, is inspiration. And so I just will end up with, we do invite you to visit us here at Gardens of the Big Bend. We're located right on I-10, exit 181, literally in all 4 corners of the exit. And it's very easy to get to, just west of Tallahassee. And now I'll try to handle some of those questions that you say we have lined up.
Okay, well, here they come. Do you have issues with rabbits eating your perennial peanut? They're having that in Charlotte County.
I've got the queen of perennial peanut with me right now, and that is my assistant, Kelly Thomas, who just finished her master's degree working on perennial peanut. Kelly, you want to chime in here?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that a lot from master gardeners, but here at the station, we don't have any herbivory.
Okay. And then Kelly, since we have you, do you want to talk a little bit about, are there any perennial peanuts that are a little bit more shade tolerant than others?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think they've really looked at shade tolerance in between cultivars yet. Maybe another graduate student will, but as of now, I know that perennial peanut will perform well under like 30% shade.
Okay.
Generally will affect height, but maybe not the coverage, but that would be a good subject for future research.
Okay. And then the pinto, what's the difference between our rhizomatous and pinto bean peanut?
Yeah, so pinto peanut is a stoloniferous. And you can tell if it's mislabeled in the nursery, you'll have these overarching what look like stems draping over the pot. Mm-hmm. That will be your stoloniferous plant. And I've seen that before.
Yeah. So it runs on top of the ground instead of under the ground.
Right.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, rhizomes are underground modified stems and stolons are above ground modified stems.
Great. Well, thank you, Kelly. It's nice to hear your voice. Okay. Joyce wants to know about the blue rabbit's foot fern. She's seeing some brown tips, and she's wondering if this is due to moisture levels. I don't know.
We have not experienced that here, so I really can't comment on that at all. I will also mention that I've heard that there are some new improved selections of rabbit foot fern out as well.
Okay, good. And then we've got our Zone Envy chapter of the questions, which is, will October Magic grow in South Palm Beach County?
I don't have experience with camellias down there. I really don't know. The fact that it was selected for Gulf Coast does imply some southern adaptability. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it'll go all the way down there. Sorry.
And the hydrangeas that you showed, those are mostly for, Liette is wondering if they're growing in the sun or the shade for you.
There are shade plants for us. The big leaf hydrangea and Oakleaf Hydrangea are shade plants, yes.
Okay. And Liette also was wondering if you've had any luck with climbing hydrangeas.
I have had them here. My experience has been they're very slow, particularly slow to flower. So that's a little frustrating.
Okay. And then Sandra Meyer is wondering if any of the hydrangeas would bloom in Palm Beach.
Well, I think you can grow just about anything in a pot, in a container. Yeah. And I think they would be worth trying because some of these are smaller size hydrangeas to begin with. And I think it would be fun to try them in a container in better soil, where you can control the soil and other conditions in Palm Beach County.
Good. And then Bossum is wondering about the Rose of Sharon propagating by stem cuttings. Is that pretty effective?
Yes, it is very effective. They're not as easy as some other species are, but that is how they're done commercially, for example. And so I'm sure a homeowner could do it, maybe not as successfully, but you could still do it.
So Gary, I have a question about Althea and Rose of Sharon. Why did it fall out of favor? Was it just a trend, or?
I think it was a trend. Fashions come and go. And I think Althea and Rose of Sharon was one of those plants that suffered the same thing. And we could say the same thing about big leaf hydrangeas. They were out of fashion for a while too. Mm-hmm. So yeah. And it's really exciting, the breeding they're doing with this group now too. Really neat. Yeah. I think we'll find some of the Rose of Sharons that we can substitute for a Vitex or a Crape Myrtle. Can you imagine?
Mm-hmm. And I've seen them pruned and shaped, and people can you can kind of modify it to fit your landscape, which is so nice. Penny Potter's wondering if the Oakleaf hydrangeas would grow in Central Florida and Orange County. She hasn't had much luck.
I don't know that for sure. I would think they might, but I don't know. It all depends on microclimates, I think, these days.
Yeah, I definitely would make sure that they get spared the late afternoon sun, yes. heavy mulch, lots of organic matter worked in. I think it'd be tricky, but can do it. So Ann Bassett Height is wondering if the Alyssium would grow in South Florida.
I'm a little more skeptical of Alyssium in South Florida.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, purple leaf crepe myrtles. Janice is finding they're not very robust compared to her green leaf. Is that her or the cultivar?
No, that's a general assessment. I mean, anytime you radically change the genetic profile of a plant like that to be a different leaf color, I think it's you're bound to find some changes in vigor as well.
Okay, so Janice also would like to know the name of your red-handled clippers because she wants them.
They're Felcos.
So those are Felcos, Janice, and you absolutely need a pair or two.
The best you can find.
Yep. And then Ellen is wondering, do Magnolia butterfly tree and bridal veil Clarodendrum attract pollinators?
Magnolias are actually very primitive plants, and they're actually pollinated more by beetles, believe it or not. However, bees will collect pollen from magnolias routinely, even though they're not a true pollinator. And the Clarodendron, I have not viewed any pollinators on it. So maybe that's the answer. I don't know.
Okay. And Lucinda is wondering the name of the peanut to avoid at the big box. So do they have a name?
Well, that's the problem. Typically, they're not labeled. They're just called perennial peanut. And you can't tell whether they're the pinto type or the rhizomatous type.
Kelly, correct me if I'm wrong. Is it Centennial that might be a pinto that's named?
I think the one that's widely available is Golden Glory.
Golden Glory. Okay.
Right. Yeah, and I think pinto peanut does better, has more salt tolerance.
Oh.
It's not as cold tolerance, but for folks in South Florida, it could be a good choice.
Okay. And then Rebecca Lyon says, yay, Kelly, congratulations.
Thanks, guys.
And Mary Kay says that she loves the Nuttall oak and that she's actually a descendant of Nuttall.
Oh, very interesting.
So that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
And someone's wondering, Gary, if your yard is fenced or if you're dealing with deer pressure in your home landscape.
Not much deer pressure, fortunately. I'm very fortunate that there are deer, but they don't seem to do much browsing.
Okay. Denise says her fire bush tree is about 12 feet tall and looks like a huge bonsai. She wishes she could send you a picture. Well, you can send it to me and I'll send it to Gary. And
oh, cool. Wow.
I remember I saw one at Flamingo Gardens down in Broward County. And I didn't realize what it was until I looked at the flowers because it was a true tree, it's so big. And the ash magnolia, rare ones that need to be repopulated, where might it be found? And any ideas of how to get propagules or get divisions or propagate, starts?
Yes. What's the name of the website? Is it the FloridaNatives.com? No.
For buying native plants.
Okay. It is in production in nurseries, and there's a mail order nursery that does carry it and offer it. And I'm having trouble coming up with the name right offhand. So I'll get that to you later, Wendy, and pass it along.
Okay.
In North Florida, many of our garden centers, better garden centers, will carry it. The problem is it's a slow growing plant, and not everybody will grow it. So
yeah. Is the native hibiscus, the one that froze back, is that good for honeybees?
Very interesting question. We actually have a pollinator study right now with Dr. Mallinger, and we have the native Hibiscus grandiflorus in our study. But then Kelly has been out there collecting data. Kelly?
Yeah, we have not seen any honeybees on the grandiflorus.
Okay.
I don't think we've seen it on we compared it to a non-native equivalent too. So it doesn't seem like honeybees visit hibiscus very often.
We have both Rose of Sharon and the native grandiflorus in the study.
Okay. Then I had an unusual question, and I've been kind of saving it for last because it's sort of a little bit oddball. What is your opinion on long-keyed locust berry tree?
I don't know the plant. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I didn't think so. I think it's kind of a unique plant. And then somebody shouted it out so we can say it, that she got an ash magnolia at Tallahassee Native Nurseries. So Gary did not say it, but she did. So that's good. And Green Isle Gardens also had ash magnolias a while ago in Groveland.
Good to know.
Uh-huh. And then which Felco shear is best for the homeowner?
I think that gets a little to personal preference there, because they have them sized for different hand sizes, and whether you're left-handed or right-handed.
Left-handed, right-handed. They have one that has a pivoting handle. So You just buy a lot and you'll figure out what you need. Okay, this is probably the best question and the last one. I'm going to go to Mary Janik asks, if you had to pick only one time a year to visit Gardens of the Big Bend, what would you suggest?
I would say early to mid-spring, which would be February, March, something like that.
Okay, February, March.
But you're welcome anytime.
Anytime. But I mean, if you fancy the crepe myrtles, you would want to come more June.
Right.
But your spring bloomers, February, March, and then, you know, I think probably any time is good.
It is. I mean, we bring groups come all the time, and no matter what time of year people come, there's something to look at. It's really fun that way.
Right. I think, you know, to partner that with a visit to McClay Gardens, which is a spring garden, to go to Tallahassee Nursery and Natives Nursery to load up on what you want for spring. I think that'd be a real nice field trip for all those involved. So
absolutely, come one, come all.
Yes. So everyone's saying thank you and they love the presentation, and this is exactly what we love. We've just had so many positive comments thanking you, Gary, and I really appreciate all that you've done for the Master Gardener program over the years. This is probably officially your last webinar to us. So we thank you for so much for your support, and we really appreciate working with you through all these years. So thank you, everybody. I put in the chat box the Qualtrics link to take the survey. So if you'll click on that, and if for some reason you don't get the Qualtrics survey, email me and I'll send it to you directly, everyone. Well, thanks. Thank you. Bye, Gary. Bye, Kelly. Bye. Thanks for being there with us too. Take care.